Old Hollywood sold a perfect illusion. Satin gowns, soft lighting, faces that looked untouchable. But behind that polished femininity were lives culture watched, exposed, and punished. Some were documented trans pioneers. Others drew rumor because their power, privacy, or androgyny unsettled the era's rules. So this story is bigger than scandal. It is about glamour, secrecy, projection, and fear. And that price could be brutal. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are tonight. Caroline Cossey. Caroline Cossey entered public view as the kind of beauty old cinema loved to reward. Born in Norfolk in 1954, she later worked as a model and performer under the name Tallulah, and her height, poise, and camera-ready glamour fit the fantasy perfectly. She even appeared in the 1981 Bond film, For Your Eyes Only. On the surface, she looked like proof that the dream machine still worked. Then came the rupture. A British tabloid exposed her as transgender with the headline, "James Bond Girl Was a Boy," turning a woman the public had already accepted into a target overnight. That brutal reversal matters. Nothing visible about Cossey had changed. What changed was the story the press told about her. The culture that admired beauty suddenly treated the same beauty as fraud once it learned a hidden fact. But the scandal did not begin with Bond. Years earlier, she had already pulled back from television work after reporters started digging into her history. So by 1981, the machinery of exposure was already waiting. Here is what makes Cossey important beyond shock value. Her life shows how celebrity culture profits from glamour, then punishes the person who made that glamour possible if she does not fit a narrow rule. She later wrote memoirs, posed for Playboy in 1991, and fought legal battles over recognition and marriage. In other words, she refused to disappear. Cossey belongs here because her story reveals the cruel split at the center of fame. Adored as an image, attacked as a person. Christine Jorgensen. Christine Jorgensen's story arrived wrapped in elegance and headlines. Born in New York in 1926, she traveled to Denmark and underwent medical treatment that made her, in the eyes of the press, a global first. When she returned to the United States in 1952, newspapers did not treat her as a private citizen coming home. They treated her as front-page revelation. Suddenly, one woman's transition became international theater. That response is why Jorgensen matters so much. She was not famous because Hollywood invented her. She became famous because mass media turned her body and identity into a national spectacle. Reports emphasized transformation, novelty, and shock. Yet the woman at the center of all that noise was widely described as poised, witty, and composed. The calmer she appeared, the more feverish the coverage became. Wait. That contrast is the point. Jorgensen was not merely looked at, she was used as a symbol. For some Americans, she represented scientific progress. For others, moral panic. For many, she became a screen onto which the country projected fear, fascination, and confusion about gender in the modern age. She later built a career on stage and in lectures, speaking with intelligence and humor instead of hiding from the attention. That gave her a kind of control, but it also came with a burden no one should have to carry. She was expected to explain herself for an entire category of people. Jorgensen belongs in this lineup because her fame exposed a deeper truth. When culture meets ambiguity, it often turns a person into a public lesson before allowing her to be human. Candy Darling. Candy Darling built herself like a black and white close-up that refused to fade. Born in Queens in 1944, she emerged from New York's underground scene and became one of Andy Warhol's most unforgettable superstars, appearing in films like Flesh and Women in Revolt. But Candy was never just a downtown curiosity. She modeled herself on old Hollywood beauty, especially the soft, luminous glamour of classic screen sirens. She wanted not irony, but radiance. That is what makes her story so haunting. People adored the look, the hair, the voice, the poise, the fantasy. Yet admiration often came mixed with distance, as if she were beautiful only on the condition that she remain a spectacle. She could be photographed by Cecil Beaton and Richard Avedon, admired by Tennessee Williams, and immortalized in songs, yet still be treated as an exquisite exception instead of a fully recognized actress. Here is where it gets sadder. Darling's glamour felt artificial to critics who missed the emotional truth inside it. But that performance was not emptiness. It was labor. It was longing. It was a way of making herself visible in a culture that often preferred transgender women as symbols, muses, or legends, rather than as workers with ambition. She died of lymphoma in 1974, at only 29. That early death froze her image in myth. Still, Candy belongs here for more than tragic beauty. She showed that performance can be both shield and confession. In her case, old Hollywood femininity was not a mask hiding the real person. It was the language she used to become one. April Ashley. April Ashley seemed to embody a particularly British kind of glamour. Born in Liverpool in 1935, she later performed at Le Carrousel de Paris under the name Tony April, one of the most famous cabaret venues associated with transgender performers. She became a model, moved in high society, and carried herself with the cool refinement of someone who had fought hard to make elegance look effortless. From a distance, she appeared to have crossed into the world of beauty, money, and acceptance. Then the system struck back. In 1961, the Sunday People outed her as transgender. Later, her marriage to Arthur Corbett collapsed into the legal case Corbett v. Corbett, and in 1970, a British court annulled the marriage on the basis that she was male-in-law. That ruling was devastating, not only personally, but historically. It shaped British legal thinking about sex and gender for decades, until later reforms such as the Gender Recognition Act 2004 changed the legal landscape. This is why Ashley's story cannot be reduced to scandal. Her beauty did not protect her. Her sophistication did not protect her. Her social connections did not protect her. Once institutions decided that ambiguity had to be punished, the public image became almost irrelevant. But Ashley did not vanish into shame. She wrote, spoke, and lived long enough to be recognized as a trailblazer rather than a punchline. That arc matters. Her story reveals the violence hidden inside respectability. Old celebrity culture loved reinvention, but only on terms it controlled. Ashley belongs here because she exposed what happened when a woman reinvented herself beautifully, convincingly, and beyond the permission of the era. Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn projected a different kind of glamour. Not softness first, but command. Born in Hartford in 1907, she became one of Hollywood's greatest stars and eventually won 4 Academy Awards. Her screen presence was bright, aristocratic, and unmistakably feminine, yet off-screen she often wore slacks, embraced an athletic style, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who did not intend to shrink for anyone. In an industry built on managed femininity, that alone could look defiant. So rumor followed. To be clear, there is no documented evidence that Hepburn was transgender, and rumor is not proof. But the persistence of speculation around her tells us something important about the time. Her privacy, her trousers, her sharp voice, and her refusal to perform softness on demand made audiences read mystery where there may have been nothing but independence. Then came the cultural lesson. Hollywood could sell Hepburn's strength on screen because it was wrapped in star power and talent. Off-screen, that same strength threatened expectations. She had been labeled box office poison in the late 1930s, before reviving her career with the Philadelphia Story, and throughout her image, she remained a woman people admired precisely because she resisted easy classification. That matters here. Hepburn belongs in this lineup not as a documented trans figure, but as proof that old celebrity culture often treated female non-compliance as suspicious. The rumor itself is the evidence of anxiety. When a woman looked too self-possessed, too private, too unconcerned with pleasing the gaze, the culture invented a hidden truth to explain her freedom. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford represented glamour as discipline. Born Lucille Fay LeSueur, she built herself into Joan Crawford through relentless ambition, studio management, and sheer force of will. MGM first sold her as a flapper, then as a polished, fur-draped career woman whose face seemed carved out of effort and control. She was not passive beauty. She was beauty under command. That is exactly why her image felt so powerful and, to some, so intimidating. And that is where rumor enters. There is no documented evidence that Crawford was transgender, and it should not be presented as fact. But classic Hollywood gossip often clustered around stars whose control over image seemed almost excessive. With Crawford, every pose looked deliberate. Every public surface looked curated. In a culture obsessed with exposing hidden truths, perfection itself started to look suspicious. But the real twist was not the rumor. It was what the rumor revealed. Crawford's persona was built on reinvention, and old Hollywood loved reinvention right up until it became too visible. Once audiences sensed the labor behind the image, they began imagining secrets beneath it. The same system that rewarded transformation also encouraged people to treat a woman's privacy as evidence against her. Crawford's long career included an Academy Award for Mildred Pierce and decades of surviving shifts in taste, age, and studio politics. That survival required control. It required performance. It required a near-military command of self-presentation. So when later gossip tried to turn that command into something sinister, the gossip said less about Crawford than about a culture that could not separate mystery from accusation. She belongs here because her myth shows how celebrity culture manufactures suspicion. When the mask is too perfect, audiences stop asking how hard a woman worked to build it and start demanding to know what must be hidden underneath. Barbara Stanwyck. Barbara Stanwyck did not project fragility. She projected competence. Born Ruby Stevens in Brooklyn in 1907, she became one of the most formidable actresses in American film, playing strong-willed, independent women in works ranging from Stella Dallas to Double Indemnity. Her appeal was not built on dreamy softness. It came from intelligence, restraint, and an almost dangerous self-possession. She looked like someone who understood the bargain before anyone else in the room. That very quality helped generate years of coded speculation. To be clear, there is no documented basis for calling Stanwyck transgender, and rumor is not evidence. But old Hollywood repeatedly treated women with authority, privacy, and emotional toughness as somehow suspect. Stanwyck did not over-explain herself. She did not melt on cue. She kept a guarded public image. In a culture that wanted women readable, that reserve invited projection. Here is why that matters. The gossip says something ugly about the era's rules. Male toughness looked natural. Female toughness looked like a clue. A woman could be admired for strength on screen, yet off-screen the same traits could trigger whispering about what she really was. Stanwyck belongs in this lineup because she shows how suspicion could attach not to scandal, but to mastery. She was powerful without apology. For old Hollywood, that alone could create myth. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead was less a star than an event. Born in Alabama in 1902, she became famous on stage and screen, but also for a voice so husky and a personality so unruly that biography and performance seemed to blur together. She was witty, theatrical, sexually outspoken, and impossible to shrink into polite femininity. That made her magnetic. It also made her a factory for legend. So yes, gossip surrounded her. But again, there is no documented evidence that Bankhead was transgender, and the point is not to convert rumor into truth. The point is to notice why rumor attached itself to her so easily. Her deep voice, swagger, appetite, and open defiance of decorum made her seem larger than category. People often respond to that kind of excess by inventing a secret that will make it feel containable. Then everything shifts. With Bankhead, the speculation matters because it reveals how the culture punished women who refused neat boundaries. She was not just glamorous. She was loud about being alive. She turned style into attack, wit into armor, and sexuality into performance. For some audiences, that freedom looked thrilling. For others, it looked unnatural. That is why she closes this list. Bankhead belongs here not as confirmed hidden truth, but as a final example of how celebrity culture confuses non-compliance with mystery. When a woman becomes too expansive for the role written for her, the public often writes a darker one instead. Maybe the deepest Hollywood secret was never hidden inside these women at all. Maybe it lived in a culture that sold reinvention, feared ambiguity, and punished anyone who made performance look real. Which story stayed with you most? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell for more untold stories.